Lord give me strength. 7 a.m. 7 on a Tuesday. And Jerry's out there, bless his heart, or maybe not, roaring his lawnmower like he's auditioning for a monster truck rally. I swear some people have no consideration. Anyway, where was I? Yes, Moonbeam. Moonbeam. Honestly, you'd think my son, bless his cotton socks, would have put his foot down. But no, he's putty in Tiffany's hands. Tiffany, my daughter-in-law. Sweet girl, I guess, but the name? Well, it just about gave me a stroke. It all started, as these things often do, with Pinterest. Tiffany, bless her heart, spent her entire pregnancy glued to that infernal website. Baby names, nurseries designed to look like enchanted forests, organic cotton onesies that cost more than my first car. Don't even get me started. I swear, back in my day, we just picked a name we liked and got on with it. Now, it's a whole production. So, she's showing me these Pinterest boards beaming like the Cheshire Cat, and I'm trying to look interested, even though my arthritis is acting up and all I want is a cup of Earl Grey in a quiet corner. And then she drops it. "We've decided on a name, Helen," she chirps. "Isn't it just perfect?" "Oh," I say, bracing myself. I had a bad feeling. She pulls out her iPhone, scrolls through a few pictures of crystals and tie-dye, and then shows me this image of a smiling baby surrounded by, well, moons. Crescent moons, full moons, little cartoon moons with sleepy eyes. It was enough to give a person the sugar diabetes. "Moonbeam," she announced. "Her name will be Moonbeam." I nearly choked on my own spit. "Moonbeam?" I managed to croak out. "As in, the light from the moon?" "Yes," she squeals. "Isn't it just so ethereal?" "Ethereal? Honey, the only thing ethereal about that name is how far removed it is from reality. Moonbeam. She might as well have named her Sparkle, Rainbow, or Fuzzy Unicorn. I swear, this generation. Now, I'm not one to cause a fuss. I'm a Southern lady through and through. But some things you just can't abide. Naming a child Moonbeam is one of them. That poor girl would be explaining her name to everyone she met for the rest of her life. Job interviews, doctor's appointments, filling out forms at the DMV. It was a cruel and unusual punishment, plain and simple. I tried to reason with her, of course. I said, "Sweetie, it's unique. Are you sure you wouldn't prefer something a little more traditional? Something that won't get her laughed out of the playground?" But Tiffany, bless her heart, was having none of it. She said Moonbeam was a reflection of her free spirit and that it would connect her to the cosmos. I swear I nearly needed smelling salts. My son, bless his cotton socks, just stood there looking helpless. He loves Tiffany, he really does. He'd probably agree to name the child Captain Underpants if she asked him to. He's a good boy, my David, but he's got the spine of a wet noodle when it comes to his wife. So there I was, trapped between my daughter-in-law's Pinterest fantasies and my son's spinelessness with the fate of my granddaughter hanging in the balance. What was a Nana to do? Well, I did what any self-respecting, slightly devious, and fiercely protective grandmother would do. I hatched a plan. See, Tiffany, bless her heart, had a difficult delivery, a C-section. Poor thing. She was out of it for a good day or two. David, of course, was a mess, running back and forth between the baby and his wife, looking like he was about to faint. And who was there to keep things running smoothly? Yours truly. That's right. Nana Helen stepped in. I took charge. I made sure Tiffany had her pain meds, that David ate something other than vending machine chips, and that the baby was properly cared for. And while I was at it, I helped David fill out the birth certificate. He was exhausted, bless his heart. He just kept saying, "Whatever you think, Mom, just whatever." So I filled it out. I put down Moonbeam because I'm not a monster. But then, in the middle name section, I added a little something extra, a little insurance, you might say. Moonbeam Ruth. Ruth was my mother's name, a strong, sensible, no-nonsense woman who wouldn't have tolerated any of this Moonbeam nonsense for a second.
I figured if the poor child was stuck with that ridiculous first name, she could at least have a middle name that would give her a fighting chance. I made sure to write it clearly, carefully, in my best cursive, and then I handed the form back to David, who, bless his heart, didn't even glance at it before signing on the dotted line. The hospital clerk processed the form, the birth certificate was issued, and Moonbeam Ruth was officially on the books. And Tiffany, bless her heart, was none of the wiser. She was too busy cooing over her little Moonbeam and posting pictures of her on Instagram with hashtags like Cosmic Baby and Moonchild. I swear I nearly had to block her. Now here's the thing. I haven't told anyone about this. Not David, not Tiffany, not even my best friend Martha. It's my little secret, my act of rebellion, my way of fighting back against the tide of Pinterest-fueled insanity that seems to be sweeping the nation. And honestly, it makes me feel a little bit better, a little bit more in control, a little less like I'm losing my mind. But now, of course, the question is, will Tiffany ever find out?
Lord, give me strength. Tiffany waltzed in here last Tuesday, all smiles and sunshine, smelling like some fancy perfume from Bloomingdale's. "Helen, sweetie," she chirped, perching on the edge of my floral armchair like a goddamn hummingbird. "David and I were thinking about Moonbeam's future. My arthritis was acting up something fierce that day, and I swear, the damn sunlight was hitting just right to make every dust mote in the air dance a jig. I already knew this wasn't going to be a friendly visit. Tiffany only calls me Helen when she wants something. Otherwise, it's always Mom." "Oh," I said, trying to sound as if I hadn't already seen this coming. "And what sort of thinking is that, dear?" She pulled out this thick stack of papers, all legal jargon and fancy seals. "We want to set up a trust fund for Moonbeam, ensure her financial security for life. You know, with the way the world is these days," she trailed off, giving me that wide-eyed, innocent look she seems to think I fall for. "Honey, I've seen more genuine expressions on a department store mannequin." "That's thoughtful," I said carefully. "Very generous of you both." "Well," she said, smoothing down her perfectly ironed dress, "it would require a little something from you, Mum, to really get it off the ground." My ears perked up. "Here it comes." "A little something?" I repeated, feigning innocence. "What sort of little something?" She cleared her throat, avoiding my gaze. "We were thinking maybe you could contribute the house, Helen. Put it in the trust. You'd still live here, of course. It's just for Moonbeam, to secure her future." The audacity, the sheer unmitigated gall. I nearly choked on my own spit. This house has been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather built it with his own 2 hands. I raised David here. And she wants me to just hand it over to a trust for a child named Moonbeam? "You want me to put my house in a trust?" I said, my voice dangerously low. "It makes perfect sense, Helen," she pressed, her tone a little sharper now. "It's a long-term investment, a legacy for Moonbeam. And, you're not getting any younger." "Oh, I'm not getting any younger. Well, ain't that a revelation, sweetie?" "I see," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Well, Tiffany, honey, that's a very generous offer. Let me just have a look at those papers." I reached for the stack, but suddenly my eyes went blurry. "Oh dear," I said, clutching my forehead. "I seem to have misplaced my reading glasses. You know how it is. Getting older, things just start disappearing." I rummaged around on the side table, pretending to search frantically. Now, where did I put them? I could have sworn... Tiffany's smile faltered. "Maybe I can read it to you, Helen." "Oh no, sweetie, that wouldn't do at all," I said, waving my hand dismissively. "This looks like a very complicated document. I need to read it myself, make sure I understand all the legal mumbo-jumbo." I finally found my glasses, which,
of course, were right where I left them, and put them on, squinting at the first page. The print swam before my eyes. All those clauses and subclauses. It looked like it was written by a damn snake oil salesman. My goodness, I said, shaking my head. This is quite a lot to take in. You know, I've been having the hardest time concentrating lately. Jerry next door has been mowing his lawn every day this week, bright and early. It's driving me batty. That old brig has nothing better to do than run that damn lawnmower from dawn to dusk, it seems. I tell you, Tiffany, it's just impossible to think straight with all that racket. Tiffany's perfectly painted lips thinned. Perhaps we can go over it another time then, she said, her voice tight. Yes, dear, that would be best, I said, smiling sweetly. Maybe next week, when Jerry's given his grass a rest. Or maybe never, who knows? Anyway, it's Earl Grey time. Join me? She declined, saying she had to run. As she was leaving, she gave me a hug that felt more like a strategic squeeze than a genuine display of affection. She said, "We'll talk soon, Helen," with her eyes gleaming with something I couldn't quite place. After she left, I locked the door, double-bolted it, and poured myself a strong cup of Earl Grey. As I sat there, sipping my tea, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. Was Tiffany truly concerned about Moonbeam's future, or was she after something more? More than just the house, maybe.
Well, fiddlesticks, I muttered to myself, grabbing my purse and heading out. I needed to do a little investigating of my own. First stop, First Atlanta Bank. Now, I know what you're thinking. Helen, aren't you a little old to be gallivanting around town playing detective? And you'd be right, sweetie. My arthritis was acting up something fierce that day. But I had a bad feeling brewing in my gut. And when that happens, I can't just sit around and knit doilies. I need to do something. Besides, I needed to see my old friend Harold. Harold had been the bank manager there since Hector was a pup, since before they even had ATMs, for heaven's sake. Back in my day, you knew your bank manager. You trusted him, and he knew your business better than you did sometimes. Now everything's automated, and you're just a number. It's a crying shame. The bank smelled the same as it always had, faintly of lemon polish, old money, and desperation. I hated that smell. It always reminded me of tax season. I walked up to Harold's office, his nameplate gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Harold Jenkins, Vice President. Fancy title for a man who mostly just tries to keep up with all the newfangled technology these days. "Harold!" I called out, poking my head in. He looked up from his computer, his face lighting up when he saw me. "Helen Parker, what a pleasant surprise. Come in, come in. What can I do for you today?" I settled into one of the plush chairs in front of his desk, trying to look casual. "Well, Harold, I'm exploring some options for Moonbeam's future. You know how it is, wanting to provide for the little ones." Harold nodded sagely. "Of course, Helen, it's the most important thing. What kind of options are you considering?" "Well," I said, leaning forward conspiratorially, "Tiffany, you remember my daughter-in-law, the yoga instructor? She suggested setting up a trust for Moonbeam. A very specific trust, if you catch my drift. I was hoping you could explain to me the ins and outs of it all. You know, in plain English. All those lawyers and their fancy jargon just give me a headache." Harold chuckled. "I understand completely, Helen. Trusts can be complicated, but I'm happy to walk you through the basics. What were the specifics of the trust Tiffany suggested?" I launched into a deliberately vague description of the proposed trust, focusing on the parts that seemed the most unusual. As I spoke, I watched Harold's face carefully. He was a good man, but he wasn't stupid. He knew I wasn't just looking for general information. Finally, I leaned back and sighed. "Honestly, Harold, it all sounds a bit complicated. Maybe even a bit too complicated.
I'm an old woman on a fixed income, trying to do what's best for my granddaughter. Sometimes I feel like I'm being pulled in a direction I don't understand. Is there any way to look into whether it is a common path people take?" Harold steepled his fingers and looked at me thoughtfully. "Helen," he said, his voice dropping to a confidential whisper, "I know you'd do anything for you. You and Jerry were some of my first customers when I started here. But looking into someone's financial affairs, that's a delicate matter. There are privacy laws, you understand." Of course, I said quickly. "I wouldn't want you to do anything that would get you in trouble, honey." "However," he continued, "there are ways. I can't promise anything, but I can ask around, see what I can find out. Off the books, of course. Just between you and me." He winked. My heart skipped a beat. "Oh, Harold, I would be eternally grateful." He sighed and swiveled in his chair. "All right, Helen, let me see what I can do. But in the meantime, there's something else you should know." He paused, and his expression turned grave. "I hate to be the bearer of bad news, Helen, but I need to be frank with you. Your son David, he's been having some financial difficulties." I frowned. "David? But he's always been so responsible. What do you mean, difficulties?" "Well," Harold said, choosing his words carefully, "he's taken out a few loans recently. Nothing too alarming, but the amounts are substantial, and he's carrying a significant balance on his credit cards. A significant balance, Helen. More than I would expect, given his income." My stomach dropped, I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Loans for what, Harold?" Harold hesitated. "I can't say for sure, Helen, but some of the applications mentioned, home improvements and a new car, I believe." "A new car?" I repeated, stunned. "But David just bought a new car last year. He said he was leasing." Harold shrugged. "I can only tell you what I see on the paperwork, Helen. The point is, he and Tiffany are carrying a lot of debt, more than I think they can comfortably afford." A cold wave of fear washed over me. What was going on? Was Tiffany's sudden interest in Moonbeam's financial future connected to David's debt? Was she trying to get her hands on my money? Had David even told me everything? What secrets is Tiffany hiding?
Damn it all to hell. I went straight home after talking to Harold. Couldn't even stomach my Earl Grey. Just sat at my computer, arthritis flaring in my fingers, and started digging. Tiffany Miller Wellness Blog. I typed into Google. Sweetie, you would not believe the rabbit hole I fell down. Turns out, my dear daughter-in-law isn't just interested in baby names and organic kale smoothies. She's running some kind of online empire. A very shaky one, if you'd ask me. This wellness blog of hers is filled with the kind of advice that would make a sensible person choke. Detox teas that promise to melt away fat. Snake oil, that's what it is. Crystal healing sessions? Give me a break. And enough essential oils to fumigate a small town. And the affiliate marketing? Lord, the relentless, aggressive affiliate marketing. Every other sentence is a link to some product or service promising miraculous results. Use my code HEALING20 for 20% off. Transform your life with this amazing subscription box. It was nauseating. I felt a headache coming on, a throbbing familiar ache right behind my eyes. It was also failing. That's what it looked like to me. I mean, I used to be a damn fine accountant, honey. I know how to read between the lines. Sure, the website looked slick, all pastel colors and stock photos of smiling women doing yoga, but the comment sections were filled with complaints. Orders never shipped, promises unfulfilled, credit cards charged twice, and the social media numbers? Pathetic. A few hundred followers, mostly bots if I had to guess. This is what she wanted my money for. Not for Moonbeam's future, for her failing little pyramid scheme of a business. She wanted to prop it up with my social security checks, with the money I'd scrimped and saved my whole life. The audacity! That was when the rage really started to simmer. I called David. He didn't answer. Sent him a text. Call me urgent. Then I went back to the computer, searching for more. I found articles about multi-level marketing schemes disguised as wellness programs. I found forums filled with women who'd lost thousands of dollars trying to become wellness influencers. It all felt so predatory. And Tiffany, with her sweet smile and her airy pronouncements about manifesting abundance, was right in the thick of it. My iPhone buzzed. It was David. I answered, my voice tight. David, what the hell is going on? Harold told me about the loans, the credit card debt. What are you doing? He stammered. Mom, it's complicated. Complicated like your wife is about to bleed you dry with her fake wellness business? Complicated like you're lying to me about leasing a car when you took out a damn loan for one? Complicated like you're jeopardizing your daughter's future for some crystal-waving bullshit? He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, Mom, please, don't talk about Tiffany like that. She's working really hard. Oh, I'm sure she is. Probably listening in on the other line. Tell her I said hello, and tell her that if she thinks she's getting her hands on a single penny of my money, she's got another thing coming. I hung up. My hands were shaking. I got up, poured myself a glass of water, and tried to take a few deep breaths. But the anger was still bubbling inside me, a hot, corrosive acid. Then the doorbell rang. I peered through the peephole. It was Tiffany, and beside her, a young whippersnapper in a suit holding a briefcase, probably a lawyer. Damn it. I opened the door, my face a mask of polite fury. Tiffany. And who is this, sweetie? Your hired gun? Tiffany forced a smile. Helen, this is Mr. Peterson, my attorney. We just wanted to stop by and finalize the details of Moonbeam's trust. It's all ready to go. Just needs your signature. Mr. Peterson stepped forward, his face blandly professional. Mrs. Parker, if you could just take a few minutes to review the documents. He held out the briefcase, opened it, and pulled out a stack of papers. Tiffany beamed, her eyes a little too bright. It's all very straightforward, Helen. Just as we discussed, it will secure Moonbeam's future honey. I really think you will be happy. I went over it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure it aligned with all of our goals. Did you now, sweetie? I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Well, come on in. I held the door open wide. Let's just have a little chat about these goals of yours, shall we? And honey, don't think for 1 second that you're going to steamroll me into signing anything today or ever. They stepped inside. I closed the door behind them with a snap that echoed through the house. The air in the room felt thick, charged with unspoken accusations and simmering rage. I took a deep breath, preparing for battle. This was going to be a long afternoon, and I had a feeling it was going to get very, very ugly. But I didn't know that Tiffany's lawyer was pushing for me to sign it tonight. And why?
Well, isn't this cozy? I said, forcing a smile that probably looked more like a grimace. Come on in, Mr. Peterson. Let me offer you a glass of iced tea. Tiffany, sweetie, you know where the good china is. Though I doubt you've ever used it, have you? I led them into the living room, the floral wallpaper suddenly feeling intensely oppressive. I waved Mr. Peterson towards the armchair, the one my dearly departed George used to nap in after a hard day at the office. Tiffany perched on the edge of the sofa, radiating a nervous energy that could power a small city. So, Mr. Peterson, I said, my voice all sweetness and light as I headed towards the kitchen, tell me, how do you take your tea? I have Earl Grey, of course, the only civilized option, really. Earl Grey would be lovely, Mrs. Parker, he said, his voice even and professional. He seemed like a decent enough young buck, maybe a bit green behind the ears. Probably thinks he's landed the case of a lifetime. As I busied myself in the kitchen, the clinking of ice against glass providing a soundtrack to my thoughts, I started my subtle interrogation. So, this trust, I said, calling out from the kitchen. It's quite the complicated document, isn't it? All those clauses and subsections. I must confess, after all these years crunching numbers at the firm, my eyes aren't quite what they used to be. It is fairly standard, Mrs. Parker, Mr. Peterson replied smoothly. It's designed to ensure Moonbeam's financial security in the future, covering educational expenses, healthcare, and other unforeseen needs. Unforeseen needs, I repeated, pouring the tea. Like what exactly? Tiffany seems to buy her everything she wants. The other day, my son complained he couldn't afford diapers because Tiffany bought a $5,000 stroller. Poor thing. I carried the tea back into the living room, handing a glass to Mr. Peterson and offering Tiffany a tight smile. So good of you to do this for Moonbeam, Tiffany, honey. I know how busy you are with, well, everything. Mr. Peterson took a sip of his tea. The trust is structured to give Tiffany complete control over the assets, Mrs. Parker. As Moonbeam's mother, she is in the best position to make decisions regarding her welfare. My eyebrows shot up. Full control? So my son, Moonbeam's father, has absolutely no say? Tiffany shifted uncomfortably on the sofa. It's just easier this way, Helen. You know how John is. He's not always the most responsible with money. Responsible? He's a damn saint. He works himself to the bone. What about Tiffany's track record with money? I thought, but kept it inside. But surely, I pressed, turning back to Mr. Peterson, there are provisions for my son's involvement. He is her father, after all. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. The document does state that Tiffany can consult with John on major decisions, but ultimately, the final authority rests with her. My blood was starting to boil. This was even worse than I had imagined. And what happens if, God forbid, Tiffany were to, say, encounter some financial difficulties? Would these assets be protected from creditors? He hesitated for a moment, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. Yes, Mrs. Parker. The trust is designed to shield the assets from any potential claims against Tiffany. Aha! So that's what this was really about. Protecting Tiffany from her own indiscretions. It was becoming crystal clear. She wasn't worried about my son. She was worried about herself. I bet the new house that she was eyeing up was just the start of it all. So let me get this straight, I said, leaning forward, my voice taking on an edge. This trust gives Tiffany complete control over Moonbeam's inheritance, shields those assets from her creditors, and leaves my son completely out in the cold, all while she parades around in Gucci and orders $200 bottles of wine every night? Is that about right, Mr. Peterson? Mr. Peterson shifted uncomfortably. He looked at Tiffany, then back at me. The document is designed to protect Moonbeam's best interests, Mrs. Parker, he repeated, his voice losing some of its earlier confidence. I knew he was a lawyer, not a mind reader, but I started to think he might really not know the full extent of Tiffany's scheming ways. Maybe he was just another pawn in her little game. And you honestly believe that this is in Moonbeam's best interest, Mr. Peterson? That giving Tiffany carte blanche over her future is the right thing to do? He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. Tell me, Mr. Peterson, before you came here, did Tiffany mention anything about other significant debts? Perhaps related to a business venture? Or shall we say, a gambling habit? I knew she'd been dipping her fingers into some pretty shady investment schemes. I'd heard rumors from my canasta group. Mr. Peterson's eyes widened slightly. I am not at liberty to discuss my client's personal affairs, Mrs. Parker. Of course not, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. But it does make one wonder, doesn't it? What exactly is Tiffany trying to hide? I stood up, walked over to the window, and looked out at the rose bushes George had planted. He always said a good garden needed constant tending, just like a family. I'm afraid I can't sign this document today, Mr. Peterson. I need more time to review it, and perhaps conduct some of my own investigations. I turned back to face them, my gaze steely. Come to think of it, can you leave it with me tonight? I will have my lawyer go over it. Tiffany's face paled. But Mr. Peterson needs the signed document tonight, Helen. He has other clients to attend to. It needs to be sorted tonight. Why
Why the sudden rush? What was so urgent about getting my signature right now? This was getting fishier and fishier by the minute. Had I just stumbled onto something truly sinister?
Well, bless her heart, I said, tilting my head and giving Tiffany my best sweet old lady smile, the one that usually got me discounts at the Piggly Wiggly. What's the rush, sweetie? Are you afraid I'll actually read the fine print? You know, back in my day, people took their time with important decisions, didn't rush into things like a bunch of, well, never you mind. I could feel the blood pressure rising, that familiar thrum in my temples. It was the same feeling I got when George would try to help with the gardening and end up accidentally shearing off half the hydrangeas. After they had left, I went straight for the toolbox. I had a plan. A slightly unorthodox plan, but a plan nonetheless. George always said I had a knack for fixing things, be it a leaky faucet or a crooked situation. This situation? Crooked as a dog's hind leg. The next day, I started my little project. I told Martha from the Canasta group, and she just shook her head and clucked, but then whispered where I could find a good deal on miniature cameras disguised as porcelain figurines. Bless her heart, she always knew where to find a bargain. I spent the afternoon carefully placing my new decorations around the house. A cherubic angel watching over the living room, a pair of lovebirds perched on the mantelpiece, a rather stern-looking bulldog guarding the hallway. Each one, of course, with a tiny high-definition camera hidden inside, all wired back to a monitor in my sewing room. George always said I had too much time on my hands. He was right. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. Tiffany would come over for tea, all smiles and sunshine, asking about my arthritis and offering to rub my shoulders. I'd let her, all the while knowing that little cherub was recording every twitch of her deceitful smile. "So, Helen," she'd say, all syrupy sweet, "have you had a chance to look over that document yet?" "Oh, you know me, Tiffany," I'd reply, stirring my Earl Grey. "Slow and steady wins the race. Besides, these old eyes ain't what they used to be. Takes me a while to get through all that legal jargon." I'd watch her, watching me. She was always so careful, so guarded. She never said anything outright, never admitted to any financial troubles or shady dealings. It was all veiled in vague terms, whispers and half-truths. "Just thinking about Moonbeam's future, Helen," she'd say, her voice laced with concern. "Wanting to make sure she's taken care of, you know? These are uncertain times." "Uncertain indeed, sweetie," I'd agree, taking a sip of my tea, "as one is, shall we say, less than forthcoming about one's own finances." I saw a flicker of annoyance in her eyes, but she quickly masked it with that practiced smile. "Oh, Helen, you're such a worrywart. Everything's fine, perfectly fine. Just want what's best for my little Moonbeam." Days turned into weeks, and the cameras kept rolling. I spent hours in my sewing room, squinting at the monitor, rewinding and replaying snippets of conversations. I was looking for a smoking gun, something concrete, something I could take to my lawyer. But Tiffany was good, damn good. She never let her guard down, never said anything incriminating. It was all innuendo and implications, never direct admissions. She was like a politician, always dancing around the truth. The closest I got was one afternoon when she was on the phone, pacing back and forth in the living room, her voice low and urgent. "No, I told you, I'm working on it," she hissed into her iPhone. "Just give me a little more time. I'll have the money soon, I promise. Yes, I know what's at stake. Just trust me." I zoomed in on the screen, trying to catch a glimpse of the caller ID, but she kept her phone hidden, pressed against her ear. I was so close, I almost tasted it. I tried to get her to talk about it later, casually bringing up the phone call during dinner. It sounded like you were having a bit of a disagreement, Tiffany. Everything all right? Oh, just a little misunderstanding with the cable company, Helen. You know how they are. Liar. I knew she was lying, but I couldn't prove it. The evidence was circumstantial, fragmented. It wasn't enough. Then one evening, as I was reviewing the footage, I noticed something I'd missed before. A small detail, almost imperceptible. Tiffany was talking to her brother, a known hustler named Vinny. She was sitting on the sun porch, the sunlight glinting off something in her hand. I rewound, zoomed in again and again. It was a small white pill, and the label on the bottle, oxycodone, prescribed to my late husband George. I thought they were all gone, locked away in the medicine cabinet. A cold wave of fear washed over me. Was she using? Selling them? Had she been using while looking after Moonbeam? This was beyond shady investments and financial woes. This was dangerous. Now the vague phrases that Mr. Peterson used started making sense. Ensuring Tiffany's safety and future protection. Maybe it wasn't just my inheritance she was after. Maybe she was in deep with people who made loan sharks look like kindergarten teachers. I glanced at the calendar on the wall. The date for the signing was looming, a dark cloud on the horizon. Damn it all! How much time did I have left?
Damn, how was I going to buy myself some more time? I needed a plan, and fast. So, I started acting forgetful. A little bit daughtery, you might say. I figured if Tiffany thought I was losing my marbles, she'd be less likely to suspect I was onto her little game. The next morning, I misplaced my reading glasses. "Oh, Tiffany, sweetie," I called out, "have you seen my spectacles? I can't seem to find them anywhere." She came bustling in, all concern and forced sweetness. "Oh, Helen, you should be more careful. Where did you last have them?" "Now, that's just it, dear. I can't rightly recall." I fluttered my hands, putting on my best confused face. "I had them just a moment ago, I'm sure of it. Maybe I left them in the garden." Tiffany patiently searched around the living room, pulling up cushions and peering under the coffee table. I watched her, a small, wicked part of me, enjoying her performance. "Here they are, Helen, on top of your head." "Oh, mercy me," I chuckled, patting my hair. "Well, isn't that just the silliest thing? Thank you, sweetie. You're such a dear." Later that day, I accidentally poured salt into my Earl Grey instead of sugar. I took a big sip, grimaced theatrically, and then exclaimed, "My stars! This tea tastes simply dreadful! What did I do wrong?" Tiffany, who was conveniently lurking nearby, rushed over. "Let me see, Helen." She sniffed the sugar bowl, then the salt shaker. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You mixed them up, Helen. You really need to pay more attention." "Oh, I know, dear. It's just things haven't been the same since George passed. My mind isn't as sharp as it used to be, you know." I sighed dramatically, clutching my chest. "It's these pills for my arthritis, I think. They make me so foggy." I even started repeating stories. The one about my disastrous perm in 1978? I told it 3 times in one afternoon. Each time, Tiffany's smile grew a little thinner, her eyes a little sharper. "Helen, you just told me that story," she'd say, her voice carefully neutral. "Did I, dear? Well, my stars, I do go on, don't I? Getting old is such a trial." I'd give her a vacant smile and shuffle off, leaving her standing there, simmering. I thought I was doing a bang-up job, laying it on thick, you know, making her think I was one step away from needing adult diapers and constant supervision. But then she upped the ante.
One morning, a young woman showed up at the door, perky as a robin, all bright smiles and even brighter teeth. "Hello, Mrs. Parker. I'm Brenda, your new caregiver." "Caregiver? What are you talking about, dear? I don't need a caregiver," I protested. "I'm perfectly fine, just a little forgetful." Tiffany appeared, all smiles and manufactured concern. "Oh, Helen, I've been so worried about you. You've been so confused lately. I thought it would be best if you had a little help around the house, someone to keep you company and make sure you're taking your medicine." "But Tiffany!" "Brenda is lovely, Helen. She's a registered nurse assistant and she comes highly recommended." She steered Brenda into the living room, completely ignoring my protests. "Brenda, this is my mother-in-law, Helen. Helen, this is Brenda." Brenda gave me a saccharine smile and squeezed my hand a little too tightly. "It's so nice to meet you, Mrs. Parker. I'm really looking forward to spending time with you." I looked from Brenda's fake smile to Tiffany's smug expression. This wasn't about caring for me. It was about control, about having someone in my house watching my every move, reporting back to Tiffany. Brenda was no caregiver. She was a spy. The next few days were excruciating. Brenda followed me around like a puppy. She watched me take my pills, making sure I actually swallowed them, the little twit. She even insisted on accompanying me on my daily walks, chatting incessantly about the weather and the birds and the bees, while her eyes constantly scanned the surroundings. I tried to ignore her, to go about my business as usual, but it was impossible. She was always there, a constant reminder of Tiffany's treachery. One afternoon, I was searching for my checkbook, rummaging through drawers and muttering to myself. Brenda, of course, was right there, hovering. "Can I help you find something, Mrs. Parker?" "Oh, thank you, dear, but I think I can manage." I pulled out a stack of old photographs. I flipped through them, pausing at a picture of George and me on our honeymoon. "My George," I sighed, my voice cracking with emotion. "He was such a good man." Brenda patted my arm awkwardly. "I'm sure he was, Mrs. Parker." I smiled weakly, then continued my search. But as soon as Brenda turned her back, I slipped the photograph into my pocket. I had an idea, a risky one, but I was desperate. Later that evening, after Brenda had gone home, I waited until I heard Tiffany go to bed. Then I crept downstairs, armed with a flashlight and a healthy dose of righteous anger. It was time to find out just how deep this rabbit hole went. Will Tiffany see through my act, or will she let me stumble towards the finish line?
"Well, I'll be damned," I muttered under my breath, flashlight beam dancing across the dusty shelves in the basement. Boxes and boxes of George's old tax returns, meticulously filed. The man never threw anything away. Not even that ridiculous porcelain doll Tiffany gave Moonbeam for her first birthday. Thing looked like it was staring into your soul. Anyway, I was looking for something specific, something that would prove Tiffany was up to no good. Just then, I heard footsteps overhead. Tiffany! I quickly killed the flashlight and ducked behind a stack of holiday decorations, my heart hammering against my ribs. My arthritis was screaming at me to sit down, but there was no time for that. I held my breath as Tiffany's footsteps grew louder, then faded away. That was close. Too close. The next day, I decided to play my hand. I needed to know just how far Tiffany was willing to go. I asked Brenda to go grab me some prune juice from the store. "You're such a dear, Brenda. This old lady's bowels aren't what they used to be, you know." Brenda, bless her heart, practically skipped out the door. And that's when I cornered Tiffany in the sunroom, the one with the view of the rose garden. "Tiffany, honey," I began, my voice trembling just a little, "I've been doing some thinking about the trust. About everything."
She smiled, that saccharine smile that could curdle milk. Yes, Helen, what about it? I paused, taking a deep breath. I'm getting old, Tiffany, and frankly, this house is too much for me. The stairs, the garden, it's all just too much. Maybe it's time to consider selling. I watched her face carefully, searching for any sign of surprise, of guilt, of anything real. Her eyes widened just a fraction, a flicker of greed dancing within them. "Oh, Helen," she said, her voice dripping with concern, "are you sure? This house has been in the family for so long." I forced a weak smile. "Yes, dear, I'm sure. It's just too much. I was thinking maybe after the trust is finalized, we could put it on the market. Find me a nice little condo, something manageable." Her smile widened, and this time it reached her eyes. This time it was genuine. "That's actually a wonderful idea, Helen. A condo would be perfect for you. Less to worry about, more time to relax." "Exactly," I said, trying to keep the anger from boiling over. "And you, sweetie, you could use the money from the house to, I don't know, invest in your wellness business or, that timeshare in Aruba you've been eyeing." Tiffany's eyes gleamed. "Oh, Helen, you're so generous. That would be life-changing." "Glad I could help," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Just promise me one thing, Tiffany. Promise me you'll take care of Moonbeam. That's all I care about." "Of course, Helen. Moonbeam is my world," she said, her voice sickeningly sweet. I couldn't take it anymore. The act, the lies, the blatant manipulation. My voice dropped to a near whisper. "You'd sell your own grandmother for a quick buck, wouldn't you, Tiffany?" Her face hardened. "Don't be ridiculous, Helen." "Oh, I don't think I am," I said, my voice rising. "I know exactly what you're doing. You think I'm some senile old woman, easily manipulated. You think you can waltz in here, sweet-talk me into signing away my life, and then sell my home out from under me. You think you can just erase me?" Tiffany took a step back, her eyes narrowed. "I don't know what you're talking about, Helen." "Oh, I think you do," I said, reaching for my Earl Grey teapot on the table. "You see this teapot, Tiffany? Pretty, isn't it? I love to drink my Earl Grey out of it every morning. What you don't know is that it has a little secret." I lifted the teapot and, with a flourish, revealed a tiny microphone hidden inside. Tiffany's face paled. "Everything, Tiffany, every single word you've said in this house for the past 3 weeks has been recorded. Our little chats, your concerns for my well-being, your little plan to sell my house the second you get your grubby little hands on the trust. It's all right here." I thought I had her. I thought I'd finally trapped her in her own web of lies. But then Tiffany smiled, a slow, predatory smile that sent a chill down my spine. "Oh, Helen," she said, her voice dangerously calm, "that's very clever. Very clever indeed. But you see, sweetie, that recording is completely inadmissible in court." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "What? What are you talking about?" "Dementia, Helen. Your episodes, your confusion, your inability to remember things. Your doctor has already diagnosed you with early-stage dementia. Did you know that? Any lawyer worth their salt would argue that you weren't in your right mind when you made that recording, that you were easily manipulated, that you lacked the capacity to consent to being recorded." She stepped closer, her voice a low, menacing whisper. "So go ahead, Helen.
Try to use that recording. Try to expose me. See what happens. Because all you'll be doing is proving that you're not fit to manage your own affairs. And guess who gets to manage them then? That's right, sweetie. Me. My knees almost buckled. Had I just handed her everything on a silver platter? Had my little plan backfired spectacularly?
Lord have mercy. I felt like I'd swallowed a brick. She had me, the smug little thing. The doctor. That's how she knew about the life insurance policy, the trust, everything. I swear, I could smell her cheap perfume even closer as she hissed that last sentence like a viper ready to strike. I was so busy plotting, I didn't see the real game she was playing. But I wasn't going down without a fight, not yet. I straightened my shoulders, took a deep breath, and walked past her, out of the kitchen. "We'll see about that, Tiffany," I managed to say, trying to sound a lot more confident than I felt. I needed to regroup. I needed Michael. He was in the living room, glued to the goddamn golf channel, of course. I swear that boy would watch golf if the house was burning down. He looked up as I came in, a flicker of something in his eyes. Worry, maybe? Or just indigestion from the meatloaf I'd made last night. "Mom, what's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." I held up the phone. "Michael, I need you to listen to this." He frowned. "Listen to what? Another one of your stories?" "Mom, Tiffany was just telling me you've been having some memory problems. Maybe you should lie down." "Memory problems?" That little weasel had already gotten to him. I gritted my teeth. "Just listen, Michael. Please. This is important. This is about Tiffany." I pressed play. The recording started. Tiffany's voice, clear as a bell, talking about my episodes, about selling the house, about getting her hands on the trust. I watched Michael's face. He started out looking annoyed, then confused, then uncomfortable. Good. Let him squirm. Let him finally see what I've been seeing all along. The recording ended. Silence. Michael stared at the TV, his face a mask. I waited, my heart pounding. Finally, he spoke. "Mom, what is this? What does it sound like, Michael? It's Tiffany admitting she's trying to take everything from me. She's been manipulating you, manipulating me, manipulating everyone. She's a snake oil salesman in a designer dress." He shook his head slowly. "No, Mom, that's not possible. Tiffany wouldn't do that." "Wouldn't do that? Are you deaf, Michael? Did you not hear what she just said? She practically spelled it out for you." He stood up, his voice rising. "Mom, you're not being fair. Tiffany cares about you. She's concerned. She's worried about you being alone in this big house. She's worried about about your health." "Concerned? She's concerned about my bank account. She's looking forward to when she inherits the life insurance." "Don't say that," he was yelling now. "That's a terrible thing to say. Tiffany is a good person. She's a good mother." "A good mother? To Moonbeam?" I snorted. "Oh, please. She named your daughter Moonbeam. Does that sound like a good mother to you?" I instantly regretted saying it. It was low, but I was desperate. His face hardened. "Don't you dare talk about Moonbeam like that. She's a beautiful, special little girl, and Tiffany loves her very much." He took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "Mom, I think you're letting your anxieties get the better of you. Tiffany is just trying to help. She wants what's best for you, and for Moonbeam. The trust is for you, Michael, and for your children, and she is trying to get her grubby little mitts on it." "Mom, stop it. Just stop. You're being paranoid. You're being manipulative, like you've always been." "Manipulative? Me? After everything I'd done for him? After all the sacrifices I'd made?" I felt a surge of anger so intense it almost choked me. "Manipulative? I'm trying to protect you, you fool. Can't you see that? Tiffany is playing you like a cheap fiddle." He glared at me, his jaw tight. "No, Mom, I see you. I see what you're doing. You're trying to turn me against my wife. You're trying to control me. You've always done that." He stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. Maybe Tiffany is right. Maybe you do need help. Maybe you're not capable of managing your own affairs anymore." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. He believed her. He actually believed her. My own son. "Michael," I whispered, my voice trembling.
"He love you, Mom," he said, his eyes cold. "But I can't let you do this. I can't let you ruin our lives. Tiffany is my wife, Moonbeam is my daughter, and I'm going to protect them." He turned and walked out of the room, leaving me standing there, alone. The golf game blared on the TV, mocking me. I sank into the armchair, the recording phone clutched in my hand. My chest was heavy. I looked around the living room, at the familiar furniture, the pictures on the walls. My home. Was I about to lose everything? Was I completely alone in this fight?
Damn it all. Here I was, in that sterile courtroom, smelling of lemon-scented disinfectant and desperation. You know the smell, sweeties? Like a hospital trying to pretend it isn't a place people go to die? Tiffany, that little vixen, sat across the room, looking all innocent in a cream-colored suit. Butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. Michael was beside her, looking like a whipped puppy, his eyes darting between me and her, but mostly staying glued to her. Pathetic. Her lawyer, a young buck with more gel in his hair than brains in his head, swaggered up to the podium, a smug look plastered across his face. He was the kind of lawyer who probably charges by the syllable. He laid the trust agreement down in front of the judge with a flourish. A flourish! In a court of law? Where's the respect these days? "Your Honor," he began, his voice dripping with condescension, "as you can see, the trust agreement is perfectly clear. Mrs. Parker, in her own hand, stipulated that upon her death, or upon a declaration of her incapacity, the trust would be managed by her son, Michael Parker, for the benefit of his family." He paused for dramatic effect, then turned towards me with a sneer. "And of course his lovely wife and daughter." The judge, a woman with a face like a clenched fist, peered down at the document. She adjusted her glasses and flipped through the pages. "This appears to be in order," she said, her voice flat. My heart hammered against my ribs. I could feel the blood draining from my face. It was happening. She was winning. "Furthermore, Your Honor," the gel-headed lawyer continued, "I'd like to submit into evidence a statement from Dr. Emily Carter, a board-certified geriatric psychiatrist, regarding Mrs. Parker's mental state." He handed the judge another document. My blood ran cold. A psychiatrist? What was this? The judge scanned the letter. Her eyebrows rose slightly. "This statement indicates that Mrs. Parker has been experiencing periods of cognitive decline, that she has exhibited signs of paranoia and delusion, that in Dr. Carter's expert opinion, she is not fully capable of managing her own affairs." No, 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 this couldn't be happening. "Objection," I shouted, rising to my feet. "That's a lie. I'm perfectly sane." The lawyer smirked. "Your Honor, I think Mrs. Parker's outburst speaks for itself." The judge rapped her gavel. "Mrs. Parker, please control yourself. You will have an opportunity to speak." But this is outrageous. That woman has never even examined me. I never even met her." Michael wouldn't even look at me. He just stared straight ahead, his face pale. Tiffany, the snake, gave me a pitying look like I was some kind of broken toy. The judge sighed again. "Mrs. Parker, I understand this is a difficult situation, but without any credible evidence to contradict the trust agreement or the medical opinion presented, I am inclined to rule in favor of the plaintiffs." She paused, her gaze unwavering. "Unless you have something substantial to present at this time, I see no other option." Substantial. That's what she said, right before she made my blood run cold. I looked around the courtroom, at the faces of the people who were about to steal my life. Michael, lost to me. Tiffany, the snake, triumphant.
her slick lawyer practically drooling, and the judge, who was probably already thinking about what she was going to have for dinner. I thought about my home, my life, everything I had worked for, everything I wanted to leave to my grandchildren, all about to be snatched away by a scheming little gold digger and a son too blind to see the truth. I thought about my late husband, bless his soul. I swear I could almost hear him saying, "Fight, Helen, fight." But how could I fight when they had me cornered? When they had twisted the truth and turned my own son against me? When they had that doctor's note? My mind was clear as a bell, but they were trying to make me look like a fool. I sank back into my chair, defeated. It was over, wasn't it? They had won. But then I remembered something small, something seemingly insignificant. It was something I thought was a simple quirk of the court system, but maybe, just maybe, it could save me now. It was the reason they hadn't let me submit my social security information digitally and insisted on paper. It was the reason they made me fill out a physical form when everyone else in the building just scanned a barcode. But did I have enough to stop them? Did I have anything left at all?
Damn it all. Substantial. That word echoed in my ears like a death knell. The judge, a woman who probably hadn't had a decent cup of Earl Grey in her life, was nodding slowly, her face all sympathy for Tiffany. Sympathy! The girl could cry on cue better than Meryl Streep. The court finds the trust document to be valid and enforceable, she droned like she was reading the grocery list. Mrs. Parker's objections are unsubstantiated. Therefore, the court orders the transfer of assets to the trust as outlined in the document. My heart sank. I felt the blood drain from my face. Michael didn't even look at me. He just stared straight ahead like I was some stranger who'd wandered into the wrong courtroom. My own son. Blinded by what? Lust? Greed? I didn't know anymore. All I knew was I was losing everything. Tiffany shot me a smug little smile, the kind that said, "I win, you old hag." I swear, the girl had ice water in her veins. Cold, just like my iced tea. My lawyer, bless his heart, tried to object. A young buck, fresh out of law school. He was probably in diapers when I was balancing the books at Johnson & Klein. He stammered something about new evidence, about procedural irregularities, well, I couldn't really hear him over the roaring in my ears. Objection overruled, the judge snapped, not even looking at him. Mrs. Parker's cognitive state has been thoroughly examined. The court sees no reason to delay the proceedings further. Cognitive state? They tried to paint me as senile, as losing my marbles. I might forget where I put my reading glasses sometimes, but I knew exactly what Tiffany was up to, and it wasn't about love, honey, that's for sure. The young lawyer looked at me, his eyes full of pity. Pity! That was the last thing I wanted. I didn't want pity. I wanted justice. I wanted my son back. I wanted to strangle that little... I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to calm myself. I was going to have an arthritis flare-up if I didn't watch it. It was over. They had won. Tiffany would get her claws into my savings. Michael would probably buy her some fancy car with my money. And I'd be left with, what? My social security check? And a mountain of memories? I thought about my rose garden, the one that I had cultivated for over 20 years. Who would tend to it now? Tiffany? She probably thought roses came from the grocery store. I pictured her hacking away at my prize-winning blooms with a pair of dull scissors. The thought made my stomach churn. I thought about the antique china cabinet in the dining room, the one that had been passed down through my family for generations. Tiffany would probably fill it with those cheap, mass-produced knickknacks that she was so fond of. My grandmother would be turning over in her grave. Then I remembered. That stupid form.
That blasted form I had to fill out in triplicate. The one that asked for my mother's maiden name, my date of birth, my social security number, everything. I had tried to submit it all online, of course. Back in my day, we used to use carbon paper and typewriters. Now everything is electronic, but no, they wouldn't let me. "Court policy, Mrs. Parker," the clerk had chirped, all bright-eyed and condescending. "We need a physical copy for our records." I remember grumbling about it at the time. It seemed like such a ridiculous waste of paper. I remember having to dig through my file cabinet searching for my birth certificate. I had even accidentally spilled tea on the form, leaving a faint stain on the corner. I'd had to get a fresh copy from that surly clerk. Everyone else was using those fancy barcode scanners with their iPhones. Me? I had to do it the old-fashioned way. I remember thinking how backward it all seemed. But now, maybe, just maybe, that backwardness could be my salvation. Because I remembered something else, something I hadn't thought about in years, something my dear and departed husband, George, had taught me about the inner workings of the court system, something about the power of a signature. A glimmer of hope flickered in my chest. A tiny spark in the darkness. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was all I had left. Did I have the energy to fight? Had they left me with anything at all? I felt like I was staring into the abyss. But then I thought of Moonbeam. Legally, Moonbeam Ruth, and I balled my fists.
Damn it, all to hell. Tiffany was practically glowing. That smug little smile plastered on her face as she hugged her lawyer, a real snake oil salesman type if I ever saw one. He was all slicked back hair and expensive cologne, the kind that probably charged by the minute just to breathe in his presence. They were practically giddy, celebrating their victory like they'd just won the damn lottery. My lottery ticket, that is. They were celebrating with my granddaughter's future. I wanted to scream, to claw at their faces, to rip that self-satisfied grin right off Tiffany's face. But I couldn't. I just sat there, slumped in my chair, feeling every one of my 72 years weighing me down like a ton of bricks. The judge had ruled in her favor, of course, said something about parental rights, about the best interests of the child, about respecting the wishes of the mother, all legal mumbo-jumbo designed to make me feel even smaller and more insignificant than I already did. What about my rights? What about my wishes? Didn't I have any say in the life of my own flesh and blood? Apparently not. Not anymore. The courtroom was emptying out now, the murmurs of conversations fading as people filed out into the hallway. I could hear the click-clack of Tiffany's heels as she strutted towards the exit, her lawyer trailing behind her like a well-trained puppy. They didn't even bother to look back, didn't even acknowledge my existence. I was invisible, a ghost. An old woman whose opinions didn't matter, whose feelings were irrelevant? Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision. I blinked them away furiously. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Not here, not now. I fumbled in my purse for a tissue, my fingers brushing against the cold metal of my checkbook. I'd brought it with me, just in case I needed to hire a lawyer to fight back. But what was the point? I was just an old lady on a fixed income. Up against Tiffany and her high-powered lawyer? It was a losing battle. I pulled out the tissue and dabbed at my eyes, trying to compose myself. I needed to get out of here, to go home and drown my sorrows in a cup of Earl Grey and a rerun of Murder, She Wrote. At least Jessica Fletcher always managed to solve her problems. I gathered my purse and my cane, preparing to stand up. My arthritis was acting up something fierce today, making every movement a painful struggle. I leaned heavily on the cane, pushing myself up from the chair. As I straightened, I noticed someone sitting in the back row, someone I hadn't seen before. He was sitting hunched over, his head in his hands, looking utterly miserable. And then he looked up, and I recognized him. Jerry! Jerry Peterson from next door? What in the world was he doing here?
Jerry was a sweet man, a widower like myself. We often chatted over the fence while I was tending to my roses and he was fussing over his tomatoes. We swapped recipes, complained about the rising cost of living, and occasionally shared a glass of wine on the porch. He'd even helped me fix my leaky faucet last summer. But what was he doing at the courthouse? He never struck me as the litigious type. He was more of a puttering around the garden, watch Jeopardy with a TV dinner kind of guy. He looked completely out of place, like a lost puppy in a room full of wolves. His face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He saw me then, his eyes widening in surprise. He quickly straightened up, trying to compose himself. But it was too late. I'd seen the despair in his eyes, the weight of the world on his shoulders. He gave me a weak, hesitant smile. "Helen," he said, his voice barely a whisper. What are you doing here?" I frowned, my curiosity piqued. "I could ask you the same question, Jerry," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "What brings you to this den of vipers?" He hesitated, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. He looked like he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. It's nothing, Helen," he mumbled, avoiding my gaze. Just some business." "Business?" I raised an eyebrow, skepticism creeping into my voice. "What kind of business, Jerry? You don't strike me as the kind of man who frequents courtrooms." He sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. It's personal, Helen. I'd rather not talk about it." "Personal, huh?" I narrowed my eyes, my mind racing. What could possibly bring Jerry Peterson to court? He was a quiet, unassuming man. He paid his bills on time, mowed his lawn every Saturday, and always brought me a slice of his famous apple pie. What could he possibly be involved in that would require a trip to the courthouse? I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something I hadn't noticed before. A deep sadness, a hidden pain. It was like he was carrying a heavy burden he couldn't share with anyone. I softened my tone. "Jerry," I said gently, "are you all right? You don't look well." He shook his head, a single tear escaping his eye. "No, Helen, I'm not all right. Not at all." My heart went out to him. Whatever was going on, it was clearly tearing him apart. But why was he here? And why was he so reluctant to tell me about it? "Jerry," I said, my voice firm but gentle, "you can tell me anything. You know that, don't you? I'm your friend." He looked at me, his eyes filled with anguish. "I don't know what to do, Helen," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm in so much trouble." He was clearly at the end of his rope, but what kind of trouble could a sweet, harmless man like Jerry possibly be in? "Jerry," I said, my voice firm but gentle, "tell me what's going on. Maybe I can help." He took a deep breath, steeling himself. It's about my house, Helen. The bank is foreclosing."
"Well, I'll be," I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. "Foreclosure? Jerry, the man practically lived and breathed responsibility. Honey, you can't be serious." He squeezed my hand, his grip surprisingly strong. "I am, Helen. I'm so far behind, I don't see any way out." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of his confession hanging heavy in the air. The sterile smell of the courthouse seemed to intensify, the fluorescent lights buzzing a monotonous tune. Lord, I hate this place. Then he did something that completely floored me. He started apologizing. I'm sorry, Helen," he stammered, his eyes darting around as if he expected someone to jump out and berate him. I know I start mowing my lawn early sometimes. I try to be quiet, but..." I blinked. Mowing his lawn? Now? "Jerry, sweetie, nobody cares about the lawn right now. You're about to lose your house." I couldn't believe my ears.
The poor man was so stressed he was fixating on the most ridiculous thing. It was almost comical, if it wasn't so tragic. He looked down at his hands, twisting them nervously. I just didn't want to bother anyone. Be a nuisance? A nuisance? I raised an eyebrow. Jerry, you bring me apple pie every other week. You're the best neighbor a gal could ask for. You're no nuisance. Though, now that I thought about it, he did start mowing at the crack of dawn every Saturday, even when I had the grandkids over. But foreclosure trumped a little noise. He finally looked up, his eyes filled with a desperate plea. The thing is, Helen, I heard something. After the hearing, my ears perked up. Overheard what, Jerry? He hesitated, chewing on his lip. I don't know if I should say anything. It's not my place, really. Jerry Peterson, don't you dare clam up on me now, I snapped, my patience wearing thin. You're telling me you know something that could help me, and you're holding back because you don't want to be a nuisance? He flinched slightly at my tone. Well, I didn't want to get involved. You know how it is, just trying to stay out of trouble. Plus, I wasn't entirely sure. Sure about what, honey? I asked, softening my voice slightly. Spit it out. He took a deep breath. I heard Tiffany talking to that caregiver. What's her name? Brenda? Linda? I don't know. Anyway, they were in the hallway and Tiffany was, she was offering her money. A lot of money. My blood ran cold. Money for what, Jerry? He looked around again, lowering his voice to a whisper. To say you were confused, that you weren't all there, to convince the judge you weren't capable of understanding your own affairs. The rage that had been simmering beneath the surface finally boiled over. That little snake, bribing a witness to lie about my mental state? I swear, back in my day we'd have tarred and feathered her. She paid her to lie? I repeated, my voice dangerously low. That little... I'll give her Moonbeam all light. She'll be seeing stars. Jerry looked terrified. Please, Helen, don't tell her I told you. She'll be furious. I felt like you deserved to know. I squeezed his hand again, this time with genuine gratitude. Thank you, Jerry. You're a true friend. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. This changed everything. I knew Tiffany was a piece of work, but I never thought she'd stoop this low. Bribing a caregiver. It was despicable. But, Jerry continued, his brow furrowed. I only heard part of the conversation. I don't know how much she paid her, or if she actually went through with it. I didn't want to get involved. You understand? I'm already stressed. I got my own problems. Wells Fargo breathing down my neck. He trailed off, looking defeated. I thought for a moment, my mind racing. Okay, Jerry, you heard the conversation. That's a start. You know the caregiver's name, even if you can't quite recall it. That's something, too. You're willing to testify, I assume. He winced. Testify? Oh, Jerry, I don't know about that. I'm not good under pressure. All those lawyers? Besides, like I said, I don't have the money to fight a legal battle with my house situation the way it is. On a fixed income, you just can't gamble like that. Damn it. He was right. He was already in dire straits. I couldn't ask him to risk everything for me. But still. Jerry, I said, looking him in the eye, you've already helped me more than you know. Just telling me this, it's invaluable. But is there anything else? Anything at all that you can do to help me prove this?
Lord have mercy, Jerry. Is there anything? Think, sweetie, think. This affects my granddaughter, not just me. My voice was rising again, and I hated it. But the thought of Tiffany's smug face, it was enough to curdle milk. Jerry chewed on his lip, a habit I'd noticed he had when he was stressed. He looked around the community center like the answer might be painted on the beige walls. Well,
he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. "There is one thing, but I don't know, Helen. It's a long shot, and I really didn't want to bring it up." My heart leapt. "What is it, Jerry? Tell me." He shifted in his chair, fiddling with the worn leather strap of his watch. "Well, you know how I deliver those online grocery orders for extra cash? Keeps me busy, gets me out of the house." I nodded impatiently. I knew all about Jerry's side hustle. He'd complained about it often enough, the traffic, the parking tickets, the cheapskates who didn't tip. "Well," he continued, "I got one of those dash cams, one of those cheap ones you buy online, for liability mostly. People try to say you hit their car or scratch their door, that sort of thing. Protects you, right? Some young buck tried to pull that on me just last week. Said I dented his precious little Tesla bumper." Showed him the video and his face just dropped. Didn't hear another word from him. He chuckled dryly. I clenched my fists. "Jerry, get to the point, please." He blinked, startled by my vehemence. Sorry, right. Well, my old truck, bless her heart, she's got this feature now where the dash cam automatically starts recording when the engine is turned on and parked, for security. Records front and audio, just in case some hoodlum tries to break in. I think I saw it on a YouTube video. Anyway, the thing is, sometimes I forget to turn it off or don't realize it's still running. I stared at him, willing him to connect the dots. He finally seemed to get it. His eyes widened. "Oh, hell, you don't think—" "Jerry," I said, my voice trembling with hope, "the day Tiffany spoke to that caregiver, the day she bribed her, where were you? Where was your truck?" He closed his eyes, concentrating. "I remember now. I was delivering groceries for Mrs. Abernathy right there on Peachtree Street, right near your house. Parked right across the street, right in front of your lawn. Remember how you complained about my truck blocking the view of your roses? Said I was a menace. I remember because I got a parking ticket that day too. Damned city." My breath caught in my throat. "Jerry, are you saying—" "I'm saying that there's a good chance my dash cam recorded the whole damn thing. If it was running, that is, and if the audio's clear enough. But it records everything. The street noises, everything." A wave of dizziness washed over me. It was almost too much to take in. "Jerry, do you still have the footage?" He nodded, a slow, hesitant nod. "Yeah, I keep it all backed up on a hard drive, just in case. You never know when you might need it, especially with all the crazies out there these days." I grabbed his hand, my knuckles white. "Jerry, you have to get that footage. You have to let me see it. It could be the key to everything." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "Okay, Helen," he said, his voice firm. "Okay, I'll do it. I'll bring it to you tomorrow. But promise me, Helen, promise me you won't get me into any trouble. I can't afford any more trouble." "I promise, Jerry, I promise. You're saving my life, my granddaughter's life. Thank you." The next day felt like an eternity. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I just paced waiting for Jerry to arrive. Finally, around noon, I saw his beat-up Ford pickup truck pull into my driveway. He emerged, looking nervous, clutching a small silver hard drive in his hand. "Here it is, Helen. I hope it's what you need." I took the hard drive, my hands shaking. I plugged it into my laptop, my heart pounding in my chest. The video was there, labeled with the date and time. I clicked play. There it was. Tiffany standing on my front porch, talking to a young woman in a nurse's uniform. The audio was surprisingly clear. I could hear every word, every carefully crafted lie, every insidious offer. Tiffany's voice, smooth and confident, filled the room. "I need you to make sure my mother-in-law, well, let's just say she's not always in the best state of mind. I'm sure you can understand. It's important she doesn't have any influence over certain decisions." Then came the offer of money, a sum that made my stomach churn. The caregiver's hesitant acceptance. It was all there, laid bare for anyone to see. Rage, cold and sharp, surged through me. This wasn't just about a name anymore. This was about manipulation, deceit, and a blatant disregard for the well-being of my own family. The next morning, I walked into that courtroom with Jerry's hard drive in my purse and a fire in my belly. I presented the video to the judge, who watched it in stunned silence. He listened to Tiffany's lies, her manipulations. When it was over, he looked at Tiffany, his face grim. "Mrs. Parker," he said to me, his voice filled with authority, "based on the evidence presented, I am immediately reversing the previous ruling. It is clear that there was a conspiracy to unduly influence the outcome of that ruling. The court recognizes the grandmother, Helen Parker, as the legal guardian of her granddaughter, Moonbeam Ruth Parker." Tiffany's face crumpled. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She looked like she might faint. My lawyer, Mr. Davidson, squeezed my hand. He had a smirk on his face. Leaving the courtroom, I felt lighter than I had in months. Jerry had saved the day. My granddaughter was safe. And Tiffany, well, Tiffany had a lot to answer for. But the question that lingered in my mind was this: will Tiffany face legal consequences for her actions?
Well, hot damn. Turns out the law isn't always blind, sweetie. The police escorted Tiffany out of the courthouse in handcuffs. Fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy. The charges piled up faster than I could keep track. Turns out that snake oil salesman she hired, the one who was supposed to assess my mental capacity, he'd been disbarred years ago for similar scams. Tiffany had really stepped in it this time. My house was safe. My finances were back under my control. I even fired that awful gossiping caregiver and hired a lovely young woman named Maria, who makes a mean pot of coffee and actually listens when I talk about my arthritis. For the first time in months, I could breathe. I could smell the honeysuckle blooming on the porch, hear the birds chirping in the oak tree, and actually taste my Earl Grey without a bitter aftertaste of anxiety. But victory, honey, is a complicated thing. My son, bless his heart, was, well, he was torn. He was furious at Tiffany, of course. He felt betrayed and humiliated. He kept repeating, "Mom, I just wanted her to be happy. I thought you two could, be friends." Friends? Tiffany? That woman would sell her own mother for a discount coupon. But beneath the anger and the shame, I saw something else in my son's eyes. Resentment. He resented that I'd exposed Tiffany. He resented that I'd gone behind his back to change Moonbeam's middle name. He resented that, in his words, I'd made a scene. He kept saying things like, "Mom, you didn't have to do all that," like defending myself and my granddaughter was some kind of overreaction. Our conversations became strained, stilted. He'd come by for Sunday dinner, but the laughter was gone. The easy banter was replaced by awkward silences. He'd stare out the window, fiddling with his iPhone, probably checking Zelle to make sure Tiffany hadn't drained his account while he was busy eating my meatloaf. He'd bring Moonbeam, of course, my little Moonbeam Ruth. She'd run to me, arms outstretched, her bright eyes sparkling. Holding her, feeling her tiny fingers clutching my neck, that was the only time I felt truly happy. But even then, a shadow lingered. I knew that every hug, every giggle was being observed, judged. Was I being too overbearing? Too lenient? Was I turning her against her mother? Tiffany, meanwhile, had lawyered up and was fighting tooth and nail. Her lawyer, some young buck with a slick-back haircut and an even slicker smile, filed motion after motion, claiming everything from prosecutorial misconduct to, well, frankly, I stopped paying attention to the legal jargon. It was all noise, designed to wear me down. The worst part was the visitation schedule. The court granted Tiffany supervised visits with Moonbeam 3 times a week. 3 times a week. I had to hand my granddaughter over to a woman I didn't trust, a woman who had tried to manipulate and control every aspect of our lives.
The visits were held at some sterile, brightly lit facility that smelled like disinfectant and desperation. I'd sit in the waiting room, clutching my purse, my heart pounding in my chest, praying that Tiffany wouldn't fill Moonbeam's head with lies or try to whisk her away. One morning, I was sitting on my porch, sipping my Earl Grey, extra bergamot, the way I like it, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. Jerry, bless his soul, was out mowing his lawn as he did every morning at precisely 7 a.m. The man was a machine. I waved, and he tipped his baseball cap, a wide grin on his face. He knew he'd been a hero. He knew he'd saved us. As I watched him, a thought struck me. Jerry had seen the video. He knew the truth. He understood what Tiffany was capable of. But my son was still struggling to reconcile the woman he loved with the monster she had become. The screen door creaked open, and my son stepped onto the porch. He looked tired, defeated. "Mom?" he said, his voice barely a whisper. I don't know what to do." I patted the seat next to me. "Sit down, sweetie," I said, trying to keep the sharpness out of my voice. "Let's talk." The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the lawn. I knew this was going to be a long conversation. I knew it was going to be painful. But I also knew that if I wanted to salvage my relationship with my son, if I wanted to build a stable, loving environment for my granddaughter, I had to find a way to forgive, to understand, and to move forward. But as I reached for his hand, a question gnawed at me. Could I truly repair the damage that had been done?